Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here as always with my good friend, colleague, and co-host Jim Gurley. And we had a pretty extensive pregame conversation. Slipped a little into politics and some current events, and then came back to reality. And we're gonna go into the center of our framework again, into the self. And I'll let Jim bring the context of the entire framework in, but a bit of similarity to what we've done before, and that's a comparison and contrasting of a couple of different selves. And today we're going to talk about both self-reflection and self-understanding. And what we talked about a little bit, Jim, was how one kind of led to the other. And there's a bit of self-awareness, I suppose, in that conversation too. But I've got a quote here. Do you want me to read the quote, or do you have anything you want to interject before I read the quote, Jim?
Yeah, that'd be a great way to start it off. Yeah.
Okay. So the quote is, we spend the first half of life building a mask and the second half deciding what to do with it, whether we keep performing the role we polished for the world or begin the harder work of integrating the parts it left out. And apparently that's a quote from Carl Jung, who's become one of your favorite guys.
Yeah. Yes, he has. And I like this because, like our own framework, it embraces a lot of things. First of all, uh, for those of you not aware of our Imperfect Men's Club framework, but also our tagline is the imperfection is the perfection. And so this quote, as you'll see, really embraces the imperfection. And at this, let's just say, uh, later stage in our life. So that's why, like we always do, it's kind of a play on words. But what I do in the morning in preparing is I look at our framework of these 5 areas of our life, in no particular order, right? Our life's work, our profession, our relationships with others, men, women, brothers, sisters, spouses, wives, whatever, girlfriends, daughters. It's different. Our relationship with money, scarcity, abundance, our relationship with our health, of course, mental health being a huge part of of everything, and our physical health, but our well-being, and then our relationship with the world. And the relationship with the world, we have many categories, but the subcategories is our politics, the red team, the blue team, and then also our worldview is comes from our background, our heritage, the place, the time we lived. So in preparation for the episodes, I like to try to find things that in the middle of all that is our self hyphen. And of course, self-awareness is the most important thing and that's what the episode really is about, right? Is to take time once a week to self-reflect and see how this is playing out in your life. It's happening. It's the concepts is based on radiant thinking. So that thought in the center is going to get radiated out to all parts of your life. So the the teachings of Carl Jung, I've just I find them fascinating for a number of reasons, but one, it holds, meaning that these writings were in the early 1900s and they couldn't be more relevant than ever before. So they're
Yeah, the good
timeless.
stuff. Yeah, it's like music, right? The good stuff
Yeah,
lasts.
just last and it applies. And obviously there's different spins on it of how it goes. But I like this, and I also we were just like I said, we had a long pregame. We talked about the World Cup soccer. I think it's a great example of people just enjoying the game, and then not sure they have their team that they support, but the game was bigger than anybody. And even though they lost, it was about celebration of a game and the competition. So I think that's really important. It's very intentional, and I've been impressed with the World Cup and the energy it's created, and it's created conversations of different cultures and how people respect one another, interact with one another.
Yeah, it's been really cool to watch. And I
Yeah,
think, as we talked about earlier, I think that everyone, as Bill Maher says, everyone's a monster until you talk to them. When
yeah,
you when you turn on the TV, figuratively speaking now with streaming and all, but you see a
but
lot of
but
anger and a lot of divisiveness. And then when you go out into the world, at least my experience is most people are pretty cool.
yeah,
So it's
but I also think this comes from self-reflection,
mhm.
reflecting on your life, reflecting on others, reflecting on things. and then truly understanding, what to do with that and what it means with that information. I think most humans want the same thing, but we talked. The reason our pregame was so long is because we started off talking about the mainstream media and what it pushes out to us,
Yeah.
to really to irritate us, to divide us, to separate us, to create a villain, and um, and it's sick. These people, even the politicians and the mainstream media, it's disgusting what they continue to do. But it's even more disgusting that I'm watching it, and so I try not
Well,
to. And so this is part of self-reflection and reflecting on what I'm doing, but also the understanding. And I'm just using that as one of many examples. This applies in many
yeah.
parts of our
Yeah,
lives.
I think it's one of the premises, if that's a word that we established, was that there's a first half to your life and a second half, and that the first half is primarily performative. You make some
Hmm.
decisions about what you want to do with your life professionally and
Yeah,
personally, and you perform towards those ends: success, material possessions,
yeah.
accomplishment, reward, all that. That's a performance. Now,
Hmm.
not entirely, but for most of us, perhaps. And
Hmm.
then something happens to transition you into that second half. It's not an arbitrary age, because I think some people probably do this in their 40s and some maybe not until they're in their 60s or 70s. And there's not a
Or maybe
right or
sometimes
wrong.
never at all.
Yeah. So,
But
well,
I'd
I
say the
think,
most don't
yeah,
do it,
most
never
people
do it.
don't ever stop, because it's so challenging
Yeah.
to just run, 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 run. It's so challenging to stop and pause
Yeah.
and reflect, right?
Yeah.
So the actual act of giving yourself permission with a level of self-awareness to say, I
Mhm.
have some impact on this.
Yeah.
What I do with the rest of my life, my happiness, my fulfillment, what's
Yeah.
worthwhile. Am I going to leave a legacy? Why am I here?
Hmm.
Those are all, we all hear about these things, but I think it's the minority of us that actually stop and give it the energy that it probably deserves. But it really is the difference between performing and reflecting.
Hmm.
Um,
I think it's fair to say, Mark, whoever's listening to this episode is the rare that does care. There was,
yeah,
otherwise it wouldn't be listening. So I
yeah,
think it's self qualifies that, and this at any age applies to, you're always learning, you should be reflecting on what's working and what's not, but
hmm,
also how you interact with the world. As we were just talking about a conversation I had at the grocery store, and the um the checker, it was Trader Joe's, and young gal, and she asked how my day was. I said, it's going good. And I said, how's yours? And she goes, um, it's going good. It's going great. And I says, that's a decision. That's a decision. That's not the default.
yeah,
I said, it's very easy to be mad at something. In fact, that's what most people are. If you want to look at something to be mad about, that comes very natural. So
yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
said, I appreciate you looking at the good things, but
yeah.
that takes is very very related to what we're talking about. That it takes some self reflection and an understanding of how you want to present yourself to the world.
Yeah, I think it's the recognition that you actually have some control over your own happiness
Hmm.
is a pretty crazy recognition. And I think that, all you got to do is get on the highway and see an accident, and how everyone wants to stop and look and see the carnage. And I think that's what we're talking about here. It's like that's human nature, I suppose. That's why I think the media is so effective with propaganda and the messaging, is because we're almost turned on by bad news more so than we are by good news. But I think this notion of stopping, perhaps in midlife, anytime, and saying, let me reflect on what I've done. Let me reflect on who I am. Let me reflect
Hmm.
on where things stand, and then maybe most importantly, where do I want this journey to continue? Where do I want it to continue to go? What direction? Just the acknowledgement that you have permission to have that conversation with yourself is probably a big move. But
Hmm.
once you give yourself permission to have that conversation, then to me, it's like self awareness becomes self reflection, becomes self understanding,
Hmm.
and so they're all very closely related. As a matter of fact, you've got a couple of definitions here if you want me to start.
Yeah, yeah. Let's break it down.
There's
Yeah.
three categories that we've broken into, not our normal five.
Hmm.
So self reflection, number one, the active audit. Self-reflection is the operational tool. It's the practice of stepping outside of yourself to look at your behavior objectively. It's high awareness, deliberate, and necessary, but it's entirely possible to spend a lifetime self-reflecting without ever achieving actual clarity. When you reflect, you might notice, I noticed I became defensive when my strategy was questioned in that meeting, just as an example, you
Mhm.
know. So I think all of these things are, you can get stuck in them or you can move fluidly from one to the next. And I
Mhm.
think there's a danger in getting stuck because at the end of the day, nothing's accomplished without action. At some point, reflection has to end and action has to take over. And I
Mhm.
think the self-understanding piece is the beginning, perhaps, of that action.
Yeah, you know what I liked about this? Who was I listening? I came across somebody talking, and it was, oh, and you know what it was? I don't listen to him very often. I came across a Andrew Tate
Oh,
um,
yeah.
talk,
Hmm.
and I've known, what most people think of him, and he's kind of a whatever he is, kind of a loudmouth thing. But his stuff was really good, and his message was be 100% responsible for everything,
Hmm.
everything you do, and everything that happens. And he speaks to men. That's his audience,
Yep.
right? Particularly
Yep.
young men. And
Yep.
and I thought that was really powerful because when you take, he said, I think he was talking about relationships. Like if you got your, even talking about as a man, you're going to get your heart broken. That's just life. But you could look at that as a gift from, he was using God, a gift from God, or the gift from the universe to go all in on yourself when you're in that pain, right? Whether it's
Yep.
your work, whether it's your training, your diet, whatever it is, but take 100% responsibility for what happened. And then
He's a, yeah, no, it's a
if I can just
wonderful
finish my thought,
quality.
but what he said was that he said it was God did this on purpose to um, remind you that you're not shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that because it is true. It humbles you. When you
Well,
have, yeah,
yeah, he's a good
because we're
example of,
not. You have to go build something to be something, and you don't do that when things are going well. That was um, a gift to be humbled and then build yourself back up. Most
yeah,
people that could break them, and
yeah, no,
others.
that's at the root of the work that I do. Yeah, it's this personal accountability it's a very attractive quality, and it breeds so many positive things. I think the thing about Andrew Tate, I haven't heard that name in a while. He's probably been misrepresented like most people have been in the media. I think there's a very strong message of personal accountability that kind
Yes.
of seeps out of everything he does, but
Yeah.
he has a very brash delivery and he offends a lot of people that are overly
Mhm.
sensitive to that. I think he's an inarticulate Jordan Peterson is what I would call him, that kind
I
of
actually think he's very articulate. I think
yeah.
he just doesn't care. He's very authentic, and he knows that for his audience, he has to speak in those ways. That's his whole thing is about being a man. His whole
Yep.
thing is about being
Yep.
masculine and also to respect a woman for what they bring and their femininity. So yeah, it's just I don't want this episode to be about Andrew Tate. I just thought of that when it talked about being aware and taking responsibility for what
Well, I
happens to you.
mean, self-accountability is I don't think you do the self-reflection and self-understanding work unless you have self-accountability. I mean,
Hmm.
and we do tend to give our happiness away to other people and things by comparison and things like that. But I think self-reflection leading to self-understanding, maybe it doesn't have to wait until the second half of your life, but when I look back on mine, those first 40 something years, I was just running, man. I was just running. And if you're performing, which I was, you don't stop and do this kind of work. And I think that you have to get to a place where you have the space to do it. And life doesn't always let that happen. It's the hamster wheel is a very easy thing to not jump off of. And
Yeah, no
I think
question.
most people never do it.
Yeah. Mark, before you move on to number two, if you could go above and then it has put a paragraph of the comparison of the two. And then I kind of, because it sets it up for the next one. about self-understanding. But
Yeah,
if,
it says while they sound like two sides of the same coin, self-reflection and self-understanding are actually two different stages of psychological growth. Think of it as the difference between looking at the data versus uncovering the root principle.
yeah, I like that. I intentionally put that in there because it does sound like it's one of the same. And then when you start to drill down into it, yeah,
Yeah, I think all these, most of the selves, I think, are pretty complementary and
yeah,
some and connected in some capacity, some much more directly than others. These are pretty direct.
yeah.
But the second component is an insight into self-understanding. The first principles blueprint. Self-understanding is the integration of that data into a cohesive mental model. It's moving past the symptoms of your personality to the architecture of it. It's knowing your cognitive wiring, your core drivers, and your shadow side so deeply that your reactions cease to be mysteries. When you have self understanding, the defense mechanism makes sense. I value competence and autonomy above all else. My defensiveness wasn't about the critique, it was a reflexive protection of my self sovereignty.
Yeah, this I'm really into this stuff, as you know, but autonomy for me is probably become the most important thing. And sovereignty, it's not the same thing. You know, we did a whole episode on self-sovereignty, right? You
Mm-hmm.
get to a point where you don't um, well, first of all, I'd like to be alone. I love independency. It's
Me
clear,
too.
it's easier. When you're younger and you're having kids or you're married, it's a little more difficult to be completely independent and to be that sovereign. So I do appreciate this, what you're saying earlier about the stage that we're in life. It could come at any time. Um, but there's no question that sovereignty, as in you have less expectations for others. That's healthy, and you don't depend on others for your happiness or your fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
You get real clear, and that comes from within, not from the
Well, I think
outside.
the other thing about self-understanding is I think this word that we both love, alignment, it's
Mhm.
is part of this understanding who you are is this exercise I take people through in my practice, which is what are your values?
Mhm.
And self-understanding that is maybe one of the ways to extract your values is this process of like who am I?
Yeah.
Right? And I think most of us kid ourselves at least a little bit, if not more, about who we actually are. We're not as honest as we think we are. We're not as
Mhm.
forthright as we think we are. We're not as consistent as we think we are. And so that just makes us human, I think. But I
Mhm.
think that if you can live your life to the extent possible where your real values, and then your actions and your words are aligned with those values, I
Mhm.
think that creates happiness. I think that minimizes anxiety. I think that solidifies purpose. And it's like, it's not easy. But I think what I find, Jim, is most people don't ever sit down and question their values. They don't test their values. They
Mhm.
assume that they understand their values. And I think that's a missing step in the self reflection and self understanding
Mhm.
process.
Yeah, and just to add to what you were talking about alignment, what even have you identified them and understand them, you still have to align them with your life and how you want to live your life, your schedule, everything is comes down to time, energy and resources, typically money, but it's not always money. So it's how you want to allocate your time,
Mm-hmm.
who to, when, where, and then your energy is really the most valuable thing because you may give somebody your time, but if your energy isn't there and you're not there, you're not present,
Mm-hmm.
then you're out of alignment. You're wasting their time. You really, if if I could talk about being sincere,
Mm-hmm.
the greatest gift you can give somebody is your presence. But if you're not aligned and you're just there because you were told to be there, asked to be there for all the wrong reasons, yeah, you've heard me say it before. That goes back to one of my favorite quotes. It's I'd rather be kind than nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have kind people around me than nice people, because kind people will tell you the truth. They'll tell you what you don't want to hear. Um,
Well,
But
another thing that happens or has happened to me, I should say, is that, you have these relationships and some of them fracture over time.
sure.
Some of them end over time because we all make decisions as we get to different stages of our life. And sometimes people that are friends or even family can fall out of alignment. They develop a different belief system or they come across a
Mhm.
different circumstance or their hardship knocks them back and they don't recover,
Yeah.
whatever. There's a litany of possibilities, but making the decision, being self-aware enough and understanding yourself well enough to go, that person's not good for me
Mhm.
is one of the hardest things I've ever done, you know?
You've mentioned that before, and you're so right on about that, right? But I also realize we do the same to others. So we're the people that aren't right for them too. It's back to self-awareness, but in self-reflection, we often when we say that is that person wasn't good for me, as if they did it intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, some often we're the ones that discarded somebody else unknowingly or consciously or not. So I always like to put that in perspective. It goes both ways, right? It's
No,
not as
it's a very valid point, and I
yeah.
think that there's different ways of saying it, but it might be
Mhm.
that it's not that that person maybe isn't as good for me as they could be.
Yeah,
It's I'm not able to act the way I should be able to around
right.
that person, you know?
That's
So
right.
I think anytime you can grab something and take responsibility for it, it becomes easier and things get better. And
Yeah,
anytime you start looking around to blame somebody or something, it doesn't get better, it gets worse. It's just
yeah,
such a simple concept and it's
yeah.
so challenging. And these things, the other thing that it bears mentioning for me, Jim, is that this is not a static thing. It's not like you go through this process and then everything's fine for the rest of your life. I mean,
Yeah, everything's dynamic. Yeah,
it's a constant recalibration. I
yeah.
want to read the third one here, and then maybe we can expand on it. But this
Mhm.
is called the trap of endless reflection. I kind of alluded to this earlier. Reflection without structured frameworks often degenerates into rumination, looping on the what and the how without ever anchoring to the fundamental why. True self understanding breaks the loop by giving you the blueprint to master the machine rather than just observing it run.
Mhm.
I think that's fascinating, you know?
There's a lot more there than I realized. Yeah, like you said, there's reminiscing. That's a big part of that.
Ruminating. Yeah. Rumination.
Ruminating. Yeah. The other word is limerence. I like that word. It's limerence is also it's you get fixated on another somebody else, and
Hmm.
it could be it's mostly romantic. It could be romantic. It's not just romantic. It could be, but yeah, I do find myself that self-reflecting that why is it that that person, why do they keep reoccurring those thoughts in my mind?
Hmm.
They may not even be in your life, or they were in your life years ago, if not decades ago. Because there's something that's telling you something, right? It's an emotion.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that was like you said, that one.
Yeah, I
Uh,
look at this one. The thing that jumps into the phrase, the cliche is, shit or get off the pot, right? It's like at some
mhm,
point you got to move. And
uh-huh,
as helpful as self-reflection is, as helpful as it is to really try and understand who you are to live your best life, action is always the best way to move forward. And the absence of action, stuck in a loop of self-reflection or self-rumination or whatever you want to call it,
mhm.
is that can get you into trouble too, because you can get into your own head and start overthinking stuff, you know?
Yeah, it's. I'm actually kind of getting more into this than originally. I didn't know how this was going to go, right? But it just kind of recapping on this. So, self self-reflection, um, the active audit makes sense. You're auditing events. You're reflecting. It's an audit of what has happened in the
Hmm.
past,
Hmm.
whatever is going on in your life, and then self-understanding. First principles kind of word seems to be coming up a lot. It's a good word,
Hmm.
but it's the blueprint of what you do with it. So and that speaks to that. Just to loop and around and around about over self-reflecting. That's probably not very productive either.
No.
Like you said, you've got to, a certain point take an action and then that's the blueprint, and that's to work that out. But I think we all do that. You know, especially I guess call it the mind just loops. It just processes the same thought over and over and over again,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
sometimes it is hard to stop that
Yeah,
thought.
one of the things that I do with my clients is, we do a lot of self-reflect. That's how I begin. It's like,
Yeah.
let's not go anywhere until we sit down and reflect on what's going on. And it's not a judgmental process. It's just an observational process because you flush out all these things. But just as a simple example, I talk to guys about, part of getting over whatever it is you're trying to get over, in my case, specifically divorce for guys, is
Mm.
you got to find some physical outlet because if you're fat and not in shape and don't have any lung power or energy, everything else is going to be harder.
That's
But
that's yeah.
but
That the
I
whole
don't
Andrew Tate thing. That's it's all about that. It's
yeah,
about first
yeah.
thing is physical. The mental health is directly related to the physical health, and
Exercise,
that is a discipline.
exercise saved my
Exercise.
life. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
and
saved
just
my life. But
yeah,
my point is going to be that's all well and good, but I'm not going to tell a guy you got to ride a bike or you got to swim laps or you got to go
yeah,
for a walk. You pick, all you got to do is find something that you enjoy to move around
yeah,
4 or 5 times a week for 20 or 30 minutes. That rest of that's up to you. But if we
yeah.
just get caught up in that, which should I do? What should I do? Just pick one and start moving. That's
Yeah, yeah. I shared this story with you, in the pregame, but this is also about changing your environment. So I'll do the short version of it. But as you know, I'm very involved in a AI project for my industry. Right, it's a big part of my week now. So San Francisco obviously is uh, you know, there's no other destination on the world than San Francisco right now as far as what's going on in AI. And I've seen this, these times come and go. It's just part of living in the Bay Area. You have your booms and your bust. But this was an AI, invitation only, about 100 founders and innovators and VCs, blah, blah, blah. It was at the top of Salesforce Tower, which is kind of cool because it was a beautiful day. You saw the whole bay. It's the tallest building in San Francisco, so it's just remarkable. But where I was going with the conversation was when you're in an environment of creators, of people that really are going to change the world, of how everything happens, you all of a sudden have this energy, and you start all these other things kind of go away. So it is removing yourself from your environment. Remember, I'm only 30 minutes away. I'm not that far away, but it's it is a you're surrounding yourself with innovators and creators that are really creating the future that nobody really knows about. And it's fun, it's exciting, it's energy, and most people will fail. That's part of it. But it reminded me of the importance of your environment, being around like-minded people that you have something in common. No different than the World Cup soccer, right? It's
yeah,
like-minded
yeah,
people that understand something. So and and you can't fake those. They're going to ask you, hey, what are you building? And you start having this conversation. And there's some tech people right now. It's all about the domain expert. Um, so you get sized up pretty quick. You can, and obviously I don't have a lot to hide. I've been around it long enough to know I don't try to be a tech person. I'm a domain expert, but I talk about the problem I'm solving in the industry, and it's it's just that reminded me of that. Change your environment if you really want to change your life. Change your
yeah.
environment, and a live event. We talked about this earlier. Interactions with people um, in the same room, at the same place. There's just nothing like that experience, and we've gotten away from that. And now that's what the point I was making. What's exciting is there's this energy, this new energy that's starting to happen again. In fact, the real estate agent that's was hosting the event said that the commercial real estate was like a huge 35% vacancy rate. He says it's getting gobbled up every day. They've never seen anything like it. That's how many
That's awesome.
companies are coming back to San Francisco, mostly AI companies. This is the coolest part. I said, well, what are they doing with all the square footage? He says, I goes, it's sales staff. Is it tech teams? He goes, it's a combination of both. This generation, one wants to be in San Francisco because they come from all over the world. Two, this work at home thing, it's That's not cool anymore. They want to be around each other. They want the energy. They want to be in a building, and of course they want a building that they feel good about. And of course these AI companies are stacked with cash. So, but I'm just
Yeah,
sharing
that's
that with
a
you because you have these. It's no different than the gold rush, right? It's this is just part of the San Francisco Bay Area. You know, people come
yeah.
from all over the
No,
world.
it's
Yeah,
that's really that's good news. And I just to clarify, I think the circumstances, the environment is the circumstances, the
yeah,
location, and the people, right?
yeah,
All of them.
yeah.
And I'm as you're telling that story, I'm just thinking to myself, remembering what it's like to walk into a room full of energetic,
Mhm,
positive, interesting people. The rest of the world just goes away for an hour,
mhm.
you know? And
Yeah,
you and
I think that yeah, the reason I shared it with you is because this so-called younger generation kind of gets a bad rap. Um, and I'm also sharing that now I think they're going to fix a lot of our problems. And I say the this younger generation, um, but the fact that they're going analog, you know, they want human interaction. They don't want to sit in their underpants all day long and work, you know, in their bedroom. So I'm sharing that because the optimism and seeing that things are changing, they're getting better. Not everybody gets to get access to that or hear that. And so you only, if you just listen to the media, there's all these really bad things, but people are people and they want to interact. They want to have experiences.
yeah,
So
no, I agree. I'll end on that. My human interaction with real people is always vast majority of the
yeah,
time very positive, very interesting, very
yeah,
enjoyable, and very different than what you see when you turn on
yeah.
any media outlet at all. So that was good stuff, Jim.
All right. Till next week,
Man,
Mark.
you too.